Greetings, everybody. Welcome once again to the RecPoker podcast. As always, sponsored by Running Aces Racetrack, Casino, and Hotel. And of course, Mark Brashan and the great website AMP as well. In this chats edition of the podcast, once I figure out how to speak again, we're going to chat with Sarah Herring. She is the head of video and podcast at PokerNews. You guys know her, a great friend of the RecPoker podcast. Just fantastic person, really plugged into the poker community. So we're going to delve into her mind a little bit and see what she's thinking on some of the things going around in the poker world. But first, let's introduce the panel. My name is Steve Fredland. I go by RecPoker Steve in the PokerStars home game. And in honor of Sarah Herring, I pulled out a quote, one of my favorites, from Elizabeth Stone. She said, "Making the decision to have a child, it is momentous. It is to decide forever to have your heart go walking around outside of your body."
I don't know how to follow that one up, but I'm Chris Jones and I'm 5x5 on PokerStars and Twitter. And I'm just really excited for this conversation.
And I'm Jim Reed. And if you want to know more about me, you can go to rec.poker/Jim. And until my weight loss challenge officially kicks off, there's always time for Grolsch.
And I am John Somsky on Poker Geek MN everywhere. And I have a quote from Worm, played by Edward Norton in Rounders. "Life, like poker, has an element of risk. It should not be avoided. It should be faced."
And I'm Rob Washam, and I'm Radman50 everywhere. I have a quote from a guy named Rick Bennett. "In the long run, there's no luck in poker, but the short run is longer than most people think."
Awesome. And I was actually wondering why Jim keeps putting off the weight loss challenge. And now I understand, because he just wants one more Grolsch. Well, a couple of quick things you guys know. We're going to do the interview with Sarah. Then we'll do a big community segment at the end. We'll tease out some of this a bit more, but Learn Pro Poker, the partnership's in full swing. A lot of great things happening between the two groups. So stay tuned. We'll talk a little bit more about that, and just an amazing set of content coming your way from Chris Jones and the crew, the book study, all kinds of great things. If you want to learn poker, you've come to the right place. If you want to do it in the context of community, I can't think of a better place than RecPoker. So check that out. So with that, let's bring her in. She has her hair matching her shirt for those of you who are watching on video. Sarah Herring, welcome.
Okay, so let's just first start out. I am pregnant again. I accidentally let this slip like a few weeks ago on the podcast, so it's out there now. And when you just read that quote, like I might have teared up a little bit. Like
I was watching to see how good is that quote? It is so
like, oh my God,
true.
This is exactly what it's like. So spot on, nice choice, Steve. And I'm just like always so excited to be with you guys. I was super sick this weekend, and I was like, we have been planning this for like 6 weeks or something. I was like, okay, if I'm not better by Monday, I'm going to be really mad. I was coughing a little bit this morning. I told Steve, I was like, dude, I don't know. I'm not going to be myself. But I told my husband, he's like, dude, the RecPoker guys, like, these are your people. Like, you just have to like pull yourself together and like, let's get it done. I might sound a little nasal. I might cough a few times, but we know I'm very skilled with the mute button. So don't worry.
Well, yeah. And then, you mentioned that, you were sick. And I, of course, initially thought, well, just whatever you need, Sarah. Don't worry about it. We'll reschedule it. And then you were kind of like, yeah, I think I'll be okay. And then I was like, just forget it. It's too much of a hassle. Just go with your people. You don't need to deal with our show. We'll figure something else out, No,
we don't play. We don't play. And like when people do that to me, I will write them off forever. Like if you cancel on me like on the day or even like 2 or 3 days in advance, like you're dead to me. Forget it.
It is
crazy because it takes a lot to get a lot of people together and to arrange these things. And I think when people just act so casually about stuff like this, it's like, come on, dude, this is my life. This is what we're doing. But I have really struggled since I put my daughter in daycare like in November. We were lucky because of COVID, basically. I didn't really have to put her in daycare as soon as I had anticipated having to. But basically, since she started, like after Christmas, of course, she's just sick all the time. And then I get sick and then my husband gets sick. And then like, really, I have been healthy my whole life. And I'm telling you, the last like 9 months, one of the three of us or two of the three of us or three of the three of us are dying every week. I feel like I'm having to cancel things all the time. And it's really like, I hope this ends. It's like an actual problem, you know?
It will end. And I'm only laughing. I see Rob nodding his head too. I mean, that's the kind of thing you get kids. My wife's a teacher too, so she's around it all the time. But like once you get 3 in the house, it just sort of can circulate. You know, when it's 2, you can kind of be like, all right, keep your space. But now you've got a little one, you're holding her. Yeah, it just kind of does their own.
It never stops. And then I'm thinking I'm going to have another one. And I'm like signing up for 5 years or something of just never being a regular human again. It's really frustrating. And most people, well, a lot of people I know in the poker world, or especially in the poker media, they don't have kids. So they don't understand. I'm like, hey guys, I'm not gonna be able to make it today. Or, hey, this thing's like coming in this time. And I think they think, oh man, this girl's like such a lazy bum. But I'm like, no, dude, just nobody understands.
Well, I think you've proven yourself over the years. You know, you've created this track record as a go-getter, as somebody who get things done. So I think you've built up, you've built up this goodwill, I think, too, because of all that you've done. But I think that it's true. Like people don't understand. And I think one of the things when I became a father for the first time, and now my boys are 24, my daughter's 21, like I've been doing this for a while, but it is amazing like how much grace you start to have for other parents. Like when you don't have kids, you don't. You're like, seriously, you have to go home at 7:30? Seriously? You can't come because your daughter's got the sniffles? Like, you know, once you have kids, you're like, I get it.
I totally was that person. I totally was like, gosh, I feel like this guy's got to deal with his kids like all the time. He's always got to leave work early. And now I'm like, and that's me.
They're like, can I go home? Yeah. So remind us now, how old is your daughter? And then when are you due with the second?
She's 16 months almost. We're like a week shy of 16 months. And the second one is due July 2nd. It's like we just bang them out real quick. We're just getting it done. But really, I waited until like the last minute to start having kids in terms of like, you know, the shriveling up ovaries or whatever. I really didn't start until I was like 35. And so we really had to just like kind of gamble. Like, you know, people are like, that's really close together. Are you sure? I'm like, we don't really have options. If we want to keep making kids, we need to just like do it.
Right. You need to start doing 2 at a time like we did. That creates a little bit quicker.
You have twins.
Yeah. Twin boys. Yeah.
God bless you and your wife.
Finally, the acknowledgement that we deserve after all of these years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What a nightmare. I mean, a blessing and a nightmare.
Both. Yeah, for sure. So did you guys kind of decide, hey, we're going to have kids, but we're going to try to avoid the World Series of Poker. But then once, you know, you realize COVID is here, you're like, no, July 2nd, let's shoot for that date because that's when, you know, now we can do that this year because now the World Series isn't going to happen.
It has been, for most people, you know, I think COVID has been horrible. And I'm not going to, we got it. So like that wasn't the best, right? But really for me, it was kind of amazing because like I got to slow down all the travel. We got to like have some family time. Like I was like living the dream. I was loving it. I'm still loving it. As everything's starting to come back, I'm kind of like, maybe we should wait, guys. I don't wear my mask anywhere, but I'm like, maybe we should just wait.
Because how often were you, when you were at the height of, you know, before you had your daughter and, you know, before COVID and everything, like how often would you travel? Like how many weeks out of the year? What percentage? How much did you travel?
Usually 12 days a month.
Okay. Yeah.
So like a solid 40-something% of the time, probably.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
And big time travel too. Like some of that's, you know, new continents and all kinds of things. So like, do you think anything's going to change now post-COVID for your type of job? Is it going to be kind of back to full scheduled travel stuff or are some things changing that we've learned as a result of COVID or?
I mean, I genuinely think this industry has gained a lot more than it's lost. I think live events are certainly going to happen. And I think they're coming back with a fury as we've seen in the last few months. I mean, all the fields are like record breaking. People are so excited to get back to it. So I feel like people appreciate what they didn't have, A. But B, there's all this, I think, especially as someone in the media, we're covering, you know, online tournaments and covering things in ways that we never did before. So I think people have also gotten more used to seeing things in different formats and seeing things in different ways, seeing people like come in on Zoom calls. I think people are more interested in watching things online now than they used to be. And opening up the technology to be able to, for example, like we saw with Fedor and Limitless, to be able to see cards up and see two people's faces playing each other. And so I really think in this relatively short span of time, there's a lot more possible than there used to be, or we're like less reliant on the things that there used to be. For me specifically, I think having kids will probably change it more than anything. I think I will probably travel to like the marquee events and maybe focus on, like during the World Series, probably more the main event. I might come in for like, one drops and things like that. But for me, I feel like this, like traveling to Bulgaria for the PokerNews Cup will probably not happen anymore.
And just to be clear, we love our Bulgarian listeners. It's not about Bulgaria. It's about you traveling with children.
Yes, it's, and I don't know. It's in my mind, I was like, oh, well, it's fine. Like, we'll just figure it out. We'll like get a nanny or whatever. Yeah. And now I'm just like, I don't want to go a week without seeing my kid. Like, what a sad life that would be.
That is the piece, again, that people that don't have kids don't understand. It's like, it's not just about taking care of them. It's that you actually love them. You actually want them. There's a piece
Exactly. And they're not welcome in the poker world, really, right? Like you can't, even at the Rio, they're not even allowed to come to. So I was actually I've been reaching out to nannies now that the World Series, has been announced. I've been reaching out to nannies in Vegas and trying to figure out, like, because I'm going to have a super little one. And then like, obviously I'm going to need help. And I think I'll probably have to have the babies come with me for that one. And even so, I was thinking, like, could I go nurse them really quick? Like if the nanny brought the baby to the like Rio, and then I was like, they're not even allowed like in the convention area, right? Like kids can't even come there. There used to be this little girl who came with her dad every year who was so cute, and she made these YouTube videos. And I remember she finally came, and she came to like meet poker players and like meet us. And I was super excited. We put her in a video. And then the security kicked her out. I was like, she's a little poker fan. Like, you got to let her in. But she was like 7. And they were like, no, she can't be here. So there's going to be some logistics. We're going to have to work out a lot of logistics.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, man, hopefully we'll both get to be there. I know Chris had a question about that as well, about the World Series. But yeah, hopefully we can connect and things will work out for that.
Yeah, Sarah, I mean, since we're talking about the WSOP, and you have such an ear to the ground in the poker world, I'm curious what you think about this big announcement, it being in the fall. What you think we can expect? I've heard anything from people predicting this is going to be the biggest thing ever. They're never going to switch it back. It's going to be fall all the time. It's going to be huge. So some people kind of like, I don't know, man, we're still kind of in a pandemic. People are still, international travel is going to be harder. Are people really going to show up for this? So what are your thoughts on both the timing and kind of expectations for the WSOP?
I mean, I think sort of like what happened with, and this is terrible. I love the World Series. I hope they don't, like hate me for this, but the way that they kind of had to slap together the World Series at the end of December. And like, then we of course ran into some pretty severe stumbling blocks in terms of, trying to get the eventual winner even to the event. I foresee that even though a lot of things are opening up in the United States, they're really not. Actually, they're clamping down in a lot of, especially like Eastern European countries and a lot of countries where we see a lot of travel for the World Series. So I definitely see that being, I personally feel like it's probably a little bit premature. And that being said, we've seen a ton in the United States of these really crazy fields that we never anticipated. So I think there'll probably be more American players than ever before and probably less Europeans, which is really great for the American players.
That's probably good for the player pool.
Yeah, I think it'll be really good. And then I think that the biggest, question mark at this point is the legal side of things. And, on the one side, Nevada is very much like grease the right palms, like know the right people or whatever. And so I definitely think, I doubt they would make this kind of announcement if they didn't feel very confident that they were going to be able to have it all happen. That being said, there's definitely, like I've seen with the fighting game, for example, in Nevada, where they were really expecting things to go one way, and then the, fighting commission makes some like crazy decision based on something else. And so I definitely, without having had it already in place, I would have thought it would be kind of crazy to make that type of an announcement. But if there's so many things when you think about like having that convention space available, basically. So I have a feeling they probably were put in a position where it was like, if you want to do it this year, you need to do it during this time. And then it was just kind of like, okay, well, let's just like make it happen. And there'll probably be some issues.
What do you think about the fall timing too? I've heard a lot of people really excited about that. Do you think that's a one-time thing, or do you think that this might be a trend?
I mean, having lived in Vegas for 10 years, it's going to be a lot nicer to be there in the fall, like for sure. But like I said, in terms of convention space and stuff like this, there's a lot of way bigger, way more financially probably enticing convention type things that come to town. And I think a lot of the, I don't want to say like bunk conventions, like us, the pool guys, like the people that are kind of like the non-mainstream. I mean, when you see these, like, what are they? The big construction toys, I don't know, like cranes and things that like fill up not too long after. It's usually in the fall at the Rio. They have a convention for very expensive industrial equipment, essentially. And I guarantee whatever those people are paying and whatever is happening during that convention is infinitely more profitable than the World Series. And I think because it's just a, nicer time to be there, probably the nicer conventions choose those times.
Yeah, that makes sense. That really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I've actually heard that they kind of planned on doing the WSOP during the summer because poker players are there to play poker, and so you pick the crappiest time of year, they're still going to show up.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so sad because you think about so many people, so many poker players who are Nordic or Dutch, or, these poker players who basically live most of their lives in the dark and cold. And, it's like winter almost all the time. And they maybe have 3 or 4 months a year that are kind of nice. And they have to spend those always in Las Vegas.
You're talking to a lot of people from Minnesota and Canada here. I think it's funny you bring that up because that's sort of my experience. I've been to Vegas 3 times in the summer for the World Series. And like, it's the same feeling. I tell people it's the same feeling. Like, I'm ready to go outside the door and I just have to go over there. Like, I just have to go over there. But I'm standing at the door bracing myself because it's 113 degrees. And I'm like, you can do this. It's like the exact same feeling I have in Minnesota when it's 31 below in the winter. And I'm like, I just have to get to my car. I can do this. So it's 150 degrees difference, but it's that same kind of feeling. But to John's point, but once I'm in a casino, like, I don't care what it's doing outside.
That's totally the truth. And they know that. I think especially, you're right, John, that they don't know, poker players are not there seeing the sights. They might go to some restaurants, here and there, but really I think most people, conventions are kind of an excuse to go get really housed with their, people they work with and maybe like cheat on their wives, or I don't know what people do with conventions. I've been on a lot of airplanes on the way back to Vegas with people going to conventions, and it seems like really scandalous. So I don't know what people do, but it's definitely not what poker players are fully degenning, rebuying, busting, buying in. I definitely would say it's from, as we, spoke about earlier before we, I think, started recording, trying to schedule interviews during the World Series of Poker is super hard, basically because poker players are just going to buy into as many things as they possibly can and, it makes sense. I mean, of course, to avoid variance or whatever, but it's like, basically they're going to just be in as many tournaments as they possibly can. And they don't care where it is or what's going on. I mean, really, if you look at the fact that Rosvedov is like a pretty frequented casino on the circuit, it's very clear, like, poker players will just go wherever the poker is.
I love that Sarah's just calling all these places out.
And they're so nice to me too. Like, I'm such a terrible person, but like, let's just be real.
So I know Jim's got a question, but real quick on the World Series thing, are you hearing the same kind of scuttlebutt for a lot of recreational players? They go to the World Series and they might not want to play the $1,000, $1,500 buy-ins. They might play some of the daily deep stacks. But during the World Series, there's also, things going on at Planet Hollywood or, wherever, all the other different places that are running there, the Grand Series or whatever. Are you hearing the same kind of thing, or are other casinos planning on leveraging around that, or do you even know, is it too early to know that yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty established, whether or not they've released schedules or anything now, that most of the big, the Wynn, the Venetian, most of the big tournament series are going to be having huge tournament series in the summer. And of course, they also will have them in the fall. Actually, a lot of those places at this point are starting to have them just consecutively back to back because they're getting so many players and it's just like so juicy at this point. But yeah, in terms of, offering big guarantees and things that we probably wouldn't normally expect from all of these places, I think it's pretty certain that.
So the recreational players thinking about, hey, do I go play the World Series or not? There's probably going to be the same kind of opportunities at the other casinos as well for the big fields, lower buy-in type things. Yeah.
For sure. I think we're going to see more poker probably available at this World Series than we have lots of other times for lots of reasons. But yeah, from what I've heard and from what I can understand, a lot of these other places are jumping on. And probably it is because they're expecting more Americans, and that a lot of the Americans are exactly like you're saying. They're people who are looking for better values, people who are looking for guarantees, who aren't just going to come fire every single thing on the schedule. And so, yeah, I mean, they don't make these decisions without, I think, having some idea of what to expect.
Yeah. Jim, did you have something?
Yeah, so talking about large field MTTs and large field tournaments, Sarah, we've talked about this before. One thing that we all need to think about is getting more women involved in poker, playing in these poker tournaments, making the game of poker more attractive to women, more comfortable place for women to hang out. So I have a couple questions on that front. First of all, Kim Petvet is one of our members in the chat here who's chatting about some similar experiences that she's had with you as a mother and as a poker player. She actually helps us facilitate a monthly discussion about empowerment in poker and making the game more available to women and make women feel more comfortable there. To me, I kind of see it in two ways. There's the way that we can behave at the table, and then there's the way that we can behave away from the table. I wonder if you could just help us talk a little bit about either of those things. If you think there's something that the poker world in general isn't doing enough of or is doing too much of.
I have very unpopular opinions on this subject. I very much less so now, but I used to spend a lot of my time recreationally playing poker, getting very intoxicated and drinking all the free wine and playing all the tournaments. And I'm sure being vulgar, and I'm sure cussing. In fact, I've been kicked out of casinos for cussing before. I've since stopped. I really try hard not to cuss now. But in terms of creating some sort of environment that feels, safe to men or women, I personally have been guilty of probably not doing that. And so I feel like it would be very hypocritical of me to start saying how, people should behave at the poker tables one way or another. And my personal experience, and of course, it's anecdotal, but I have found mostly just wonderful men who helped me understand what was happening, who were patient with me at the table, who were patient with me when I was very drunk and lippy at the table, and, tournament directors who I think were very patient and lovely with me. So I think the biggest obstacle we have to getting women in poker is women really understanding poker. So even for my own self, if I didn't have my now husband, I probably would have never been that interested in poker. Mm-hmm. But watching him play, having him explain to me some of the psychological elements of things going on, understanding the metagame, I think for most women, we're less inclined. And I am terrible in that I also think men and women are just different. For the most part, I think we just are naturally inclined towards different things. And I think women are naturally more attracted to security and less attracted to gambling in general. And so if I was looking to attract women, I mostly would focus on the parts of the game that are less about gambling and more about people, understanding people, understanding like tendencies and nuances, of the game, the meta. I think that's interesting, And maybe it's because it's just interesting to me. But that's what made me interested in poker. And so I guess I just think I actually would say, like, men, invite your girlfriends, tell them, invite your wives. And if they want to play, they can. And I think it is a very welcoming environment. I actually think a lot of the women playing poker a lot more intimidating and unfriendly than the men, if I'm honest.
And we're getting some comments in the chat here, and I wonder if do you have any comments on the Bilzerian controversy with GG, or like the role of
also,
ambassadors?
Very unpopular opinion.
Yeah. Okay. Please share it with us.
So I have been a friend of, but I say friend, like of acquaintance,
You say you're a friend
casually.
of poker, so we know you just throw that around.
I'm a friend of Vanessa Kade, and I very much respect her. I'm very excited for her and have always been hoping that her career would explode. In fact, a lot of people say that we look similar. I think we have like similar body types. Like, I just really like Vanessa. But in this situation, and I said it on the PokerNews podcast, I feel like she came at him, and then he snapped back at her, and then everyone got mad at him. And to me, I think there are certain areas, like everyone's like, oh, like saying someone's a hoe is like an area that's like, you don't go there. For me, an area that you don't go is like coming at somebody's money, like their job. So to me, and how much money he really has, how much money he made himself, I don't know. Do I think he's some amazing person that I idolize? Absolutely not. But he has an ambassador deal with a company. He's clearly making money from that thing. And so coming and saying you shouldn't have him as an ambassador and then expecting him not to say something back, to me, is naive. Like, if you want to open that conversation, and then the way that he responded to me is so like uninteresting, really. It's like being like, you're a bitch, or like, you're a jerk, or something. It wasn't, to me, it didn't really. But saying like you're irrelevant or nobody knows who you are, I think that stings. I think that's kind of a nasty comment. And, for her to have now won the Anniversary Sunday Millions was like kind of like a fun, and that's how it should be. Like, people should be able, I feel like, to have these, like, you want to say something nasty to somebody, expect them to say something nasty back to you. And then you come back and like ship a tournament, you should be able to like throw it right back in their face or whatever you want to do. I just feel like making it this space where it's like, you can't say a woman is like a hoe. It's just, I feel like we're just getting to a place in this world where you just can't say anything. And I personally don't like it. And I think if you don't want to have somebody say something like that to you, maybe don't start the conversation with, you're a bad person and I don't think you should have your job.
No, I think that will be an unpopular opinion, but I'm glad that you shared it with us. Thank you, Sarah. It is a nuanced discussion, right? I mean, the reason it's a thorny subject is because I don't think there is an obvious answer to it. But I think it is something that, whatever our motivations are, I think we should be trying to make the poker table a fun place where people can come in and be themselves. And I think that does require some tailoring of our inner selves, just like it would in any other civilized place where we want to make other people feel comfortable. But I look forward to solving this so that we can move on with it.
I'm kind of curious there, like what you've learned about whether it's the PokerNews audience or just who's ever I guess taking in media, poker media, what you've learned about the audience through some of this stuff. I mean, have you learned that they're more polarized or how they like to receive things? So whether it's, the Bilzerian, Vanessa Kade, whether it's the Postal stuff, whatever it is, there's some things that happen. There's always stuff happening, right? There's the whole heads up battle and the whole thing there. But there's, with all the technology coming out with COVID, with all kind of the controversy that's out there with the events, what are you learning as a media expert about what people want to consume, how they want to consume it? Are things changing as far as, who the poker audience really is out there? Is it actually poker players or is it a different audience? Like what's changing in the industry?
I mean, a lot of things I think are staying the same, but I think it's taken a long time for the people who are creating the media content to realize this. So first, I would say, and it kind of ties into Jim's question and sort of this controversial subject, there is a very vocal minority who I think are the virtue signaling type, right? Who are very much like, this is what has to happen, and this is how everyone should be, and this is what will make the poker world great. And then I think there are a lot of people who are quiet, who don't say all of these things or say them so publicly, but who have a lot of different opinions about a lot of different things, and come from totally different backgrounds, both within our country and within the world. And so I think there's been, unfortunately, and this definitely has been the case at PokerNews, that I've fought a lot for. There's a very small niche of people who know a ton about poker and who know all of the poker players and who, think this is the most important poker story. And it turns out that's actually a really small number of people. Like, there's just a small niche of people that are like that. And actually, there's a huge number of people that casually enjoy poker, that are interested more than just the wanting to see Phil Ivey and Daniel Negreanu, although that's always going to hit, like always, but that are more interested than just I want to see famous places, but are not, or famous people rather, but are really not that interested in every, newest high stakes online heads up guy who just happens to have done something moderately interesting. And I think a lot of the problem that we've seen in the poker media and with a lot of the people who are in high positions at poker companies is that a lot of them are these people who are super poker fanboys. And that's probably what's gotten them into their position. And it's probably what makes them great at what they do. But it makes them unable, I think, to see or connect with what the majority of the audience is, which is pretty casual but intelligent poker fans. And so now we can you can use things. And I gave a conference, or I gave a presentation at a conference 3 or 4 years ago, showcasing and really showing people, and this is a terrible thing, but I always use this as an example, because at the time, my boss was trying to get us to do a documentary about Joey Ingram. And not that that wouldn't be interesting or that I wouldn't care to do that, but it was going to take a lot of time and a lot of money from us. And so I just did some Google Trend Analytics searching, and I said, okay, so this is Doug Polk. This is where he rates. This is where Daniel Negreanu rates, and this is where Joey Ingram rates. And so while everyone in the poker world at that time was totally obsessed with Joey Ingram and talking about Joey Ingram, and I also have to say I love Joey, but it was if you looked on the graph, Doug was very high and trending very hard. This was kind of an early crypto period, I feel like. Daniel Negreanu was top of the charts, crazy the whole time, staying at the top. And then Joey was barely, you could barely see the line. And so it was just, to me, such a clear example of what's happening within this sort of incestuous industry is not really indicative of what the whole who are consuming poker media are interested in and are looking at. And so it's actually quite hard, I think, to create content, because you need to make content for those hardcore poker fans, and you need to make content that's interesting to them. You need to make content for people who don't know what a string bet is yet, or who are very new to poker, who just came to your page. And then you need to make a lot of content for all of the varying degrees in between, which is where most people fall.
Yeah, that's why I find hard. That's why I find I'm so fascinated by something like a PokerNews, where you're trying to appeal to all of those markets. I mean, some of us have the luxury, RecPoker. All right, let's learn poker for the recreational player in the context of community. We can focus there. We don't need to worry about this, that, or the other. For PokerNews to try to figure out what do we talk about, and the political elements of it, like you said, sort of the pressures that are coming from inside and outside, and what are the numbers saying and what are the ratings saying and all that stuff. I think that's a fascinating sort of puzzle that you have to deal with. I want to use this phrase, moderately interesting. I think I'm going to start applying that to things when Taylor Moss wins a tournament, I'm going to tell him that was moderately interesting. I'm just going to start using things like that, but it's interesting. So I know, man, time flies with you, but I do want to talk a little bit about, just because you brought up Negreanu, And if I can just speak frankly, I'm struggling a little bit as a RecPoker, one of the core team members here. How much do we involve Negreanu in this? We've had him on the podcast, but it feels a little bit like he's kind of gone off the rails a little bit, or maybe put that another way, just in terms of his impact, or do I want to be associated with somebody like that who's, I don't know, you know what I'm saying? Some of the videos that he's done and that sort of thing. And I know that's maybe just poker being poker or whatever, but how do you wrestle with that at PokerNews when whether it's Daniel or it could be anybody else, where it's just like, boom, that does not reflect well on poker as an industry, but yet it's a big story. Like, how do you kind of wrestle with that? Because I'm trying to wrestle with that myself. How do we,
I'm terrible.
Who are, I think, bad representatives for what we represent, but they'd be a big draw. How do you balance that? You said you're terrible.
Because I don't think it's our job to be representing everyone. And actually, I just had this issue with someone was coming on our podcast, and actually she's very much like a person who's a huge advocate for women in poker. And she started a poker tour, and there was some people within our company who had said, like, she's been very mean to our staff, and she's said these kind of things that were horrible. And we really don't want to give her a platform. And, my response is like, I am not the decider of who is and is not like welcome on a platform. For me, it's like, it's up to my audience to decide how they feel about somebody or somebody's behavior. I don't want to be the person who chooses for everybody else, this is what is allowed on our show. And this is like, people like this come on, and because people are infinitely more intelligent than I think they get credit for. You don't have to like drag people along. They will figure out for themselves, whether or not they think someone is interesting, or they want to watch them. And I personally don't feel like I need to protect people from, crazy people. Now, if you are more worried about, what you associate your brand with, that's one thing. And so I actually did, a workshop a long time ago. I was really lucky, PokerNews, and I think too young actually when I did it to really understand, but some of the things have really resonated. This guy wrote this book. I think his name is Jim Perkis. It's called Brand You. And it's just basically about deciding what your brand is, and that that everyone really in this social media age should be doing this. And at the time I was really struggling with what my brand is. Lynn Christie and I all did this, and it was like Lynn Gilmartin's brand was like, I am the nice girl, and that is like very much her brand, and she's very much stuck with that. And Christie's was like, I'm the funny silly girl. And I really couldn't find what my actual brand is. And I realize now that my brand is I think just about being honest and being real. And so I think if you're going to be that, sometimes it's going to include things that are off the wall and that are crazy. And really, Daniel's been in this industry for so long, much longer than me, probably longer than you, and been in the public spotlight for a very long time. And I think all of us can relate with going through phases where we're really nice, going through phases where we're more vulgar, and I think as much as he's given back and as real as he has been with us for so long, if we don't like give him the space in the room to kind of like go through whatever it is he's like in right now, then like who are we? Like what fickle fans, really we are.
Yeah, I think that is the tension that we're talking about. We're talking strategy. Don't mind us. We'll just talk about some media strategy. But I think to your point, if your brand is authenticity and just if it's a story, we're going to tell it and let the audience decide. I think for us, it's sort of like, well, we're going to set the culture, set the tone of what RecPoker is all about. And so you kind of discern who represents those sorts of things. So it's an interesting conversation, right? For sure. So,
but like, how much is he really losing it? Like he's talking, like he's cussing a lot, I think, which, some people do for sure. And well, to me, I feel also like we're seeing a lot more maybe than we ever did before, for sure. Maybe for sure. Under Poker Stars. But I have a feeling there's plenty of people within the RecPoker community that are not offended by this or that think it's kind of funny. And there's also the question, I did a podcast with Marley Cadero not that long ago, and she was saying, there's part of Daniel that's a shtick. And I asked Daniel then when I interviewed him, like, what part of you is a shtick? How much of you is real? And he said, and it's true, because I think we all have this same experience. You cannot turn the lights on and not have some other thing to turn on that's not like, it's you, it's definitely still you, but there's something it's not you, like hanging out on the couch with your dogs or whatever. And he's had the lights on for a long time. And, so I also think what he really said is that getting married has given him the ability to care less what people think. Because he cares more what she thinks, and she really gives 0 Fs about a lot of things. And whether or not that's 100% true, I don't know. But I do think that when you care more what other people think, you are more cautious about, what you say and what you do and how you behave. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like when you're a teenager and you have to kind of push the boundaries, and then you like reel it back in a little bit, and you like, who am I? Like, what am I really? I mean, I had like a mohawk and like was like getting arrested and doing crazy things. I don't think that's my true identity or who I really am, but I was like testing it, right? And then I've been, I think, a lot of versions of myself to sort of test it. And I think maybe Daniel's testing things a little bit and letting it out.
Yeah, well, see how open you are to that in 16 years when your daughter's doing the same thing.
Oh my gosh. I feel so awful for my mom. Like, it's just so awful. What have I done to her?
Your parents as a part of this thing too. Yeah, I think
karmically, I am so due for like a horrible, horrible child.
You're so, I think the beauty that you have, you're so authentic and you're so real that I think that'll just be the culture, the environment that your family has. And so I think it's going to be less threatening to you than it was maybe to your parents, just because you're going to be in that mode of a culture of authenticity. So I think that's going to be a beautiful thing. Yeah, I think with Daniel, just to kind of close that off too, I think the struggle is just when you do have a brand, whatever that is, PokerNews has yours, RecPoker has yours. And I think, we beat the drum all the time. And it's part of the women in poker thing. And I know it's contrary to your opinion, but this idea of we just have zero tolerance for berating people at the table, whether that's even in our Poker Stars home game, wherever that is. Like, I don't want you wearing the patch if you're going to be playing a live poker and berating somebody that makes a mistake. Like, you can do that. You're a human. You're an American. Of course, we can do that as an American. But like, that's anti-community. And so we are anti anything that's anti-community. And so that's where like the Daniel stuff is like, yeah, I mean, he's free to be himself. He's free to do his thing. A lot of rec poker people are going to love that. They're going to think it's hilarious. Personally, I just have kind of put a fork on the ground saying, I don't think it's funny. I don't think it's funny to threaten your opponent, to berate your opponent, to do that kind of thing. So that's where, is it shtick? Is it entertainment? Is it whatever? But I think that's where that's kind of why I'm asking you, because it sort of is this tension between just tell the story, let people make the decision for themselves. And no, this is our brand. We're going to protect it. And if you don't like that we're being protective, find another community. And so that is a rub for me.
This goes back to, though, part of the thing with Vanessa and Dan, and maybe this is something for me. So for me personally, I get a ton of nasty comments. I've been doing this a long enough time to have seen so many nasty comments. And if you in the nasty comments say like, oh, she's a disgusting B word, like I want to like stick a dildo in her butt or something, like for some people that must be super offensive. But for me, it's just like, oh God, like, ugh. So like he probably says that to every single girl video that he sees or whatever. But if you say something, and I'll just give you an example. So one of the very first mean comments I got, someone said, who chose this girl? She has no upper lip. And I was like, I'd never thought that in my whole life. I'd never considered it. It's okay. Everyone's looking now. Don't look. I'm just kidding. But it was like so personal and so specific to me. It's small. Like it's smaller. It's fine. My daughter has big, beautiful lips. Like it's karmically, she ended up with it. It's fine. But like, it was very specific to me. And I honestly, playing at the poker table, if someone is like, oh, you're a skank or you're whatever, like this just doesn't bother me. Like these ad hominem attacks about like just anyone, anything doesn't bother me. But I actually had this experience quite a few times playing like the dailies at Aria, right? So you're at like the $125, like $150 range where you get a lot of these like mid-stakes grinders who think that they like, know what's going on in Las Vegas, none of whom know who I am. So that is also like when you're, who's your audience? It's not these guys who are like playing the $125 and the Aria, but I saw them at the table sometimes to me, but I think people stay away from me maybe because I'm a little like mouthy, or at the time, especially drinking and mouthy, but I saw them make comments to other players berating the way that they played, things that they did, decisions they made. And to me, that makes someone uncomfortable to make decisions and to play poker. And that is infinitely to me more unacceptable and unfun to be around than someone who's just like, oh, you're fat, bro, or like, oh, I don't know, like whatever, just like standard things you could say to anyone. To me, if you talk about the way that somebody plays and the decisions that they're making playing, because you're so much smarter than they are and you know so much more than they do, that's like, you can't police that, you can't monitor that, but for some reason that bothers me like way more and makes me uncomfortable to play. I start thinking, oh gosh, these guys are like paying attention to everything we're doing, and maybe I'm like making a stupid decision or mistake. I'm lucky enough to know people who know way better than most people, which makes me feel like better than that.
I think it is so interesting. I think it gets right to the core of our own. We all have our own experience. We all have our own triggers. We all have our own different things. Like some of the stuff that you said, like what bothered you wouldn't have bothered me, and what didn't bother you would have bothered me. And I think that's just kind of how we all are. And I think that's where, I mean, how do you want to then approach life? We all just have the freedom to say whatever, do whatever, and just people will like it or not and don't give an F? Or are we trying to create a community that's, sort of, centered around kindness and mutual respect? I think that either way, whatever, it's just, I think that's why you draw, and that's why you need different types of communities. That's why you need different kinds of people and different kinds of people leading different things. But Sarah, I know I keep getting warned from Jim that we're way over time. I'm into this, man. Like I'm so intrigued because I do love how you think, because one of the things that I've always loved about you is, I mean, your energy, your passion for the game, the respect you have, but you are authentic. You will sort of speak your mind. You're not afraid to say, here's an opinion. It's not the one that everybody else is getting, because I always
unpopular opinion. Sarah is coming on again.
Chardonnay, but I think no, I love that because it challenges. And I think for thinking people, we should hear an opinion contrary to ours and not just say, well, she's an idiot. We should say, what is it about that? Because I respect Sarah, but there's something there that I don't agree with. But what is going on there? What's the deeper truth? And I think that's what I'd love to have our audience be, is thinking people. So enjoy Bilzerian, enjoy Negreanu, enjoy Sarah, enjoy whatever. But when you hear contrary opinions, let's not just create this whole polarized society where I'm good, they're bad. I'm in, they're out. Let's think about things. And so I would say for the folks that didn't agree with Sarah, think about it. People that don't agree with me, think about it. And then let's have a reasonable conversation about it. If you want to. If you don't, that's fine too.
Especially because your opinions, or mine at least, have changed so many times over the years like that. And I'm still like, there's so much longer to go. I think if you're not thinking about things that other people think, then you're going to be really stuck in.
You said something earlier about, well, I don't want to do this. I said this. Now I don't want to do that because I'm a hypocrite. Well, I'm thinking, if my things aren't changing, like I am different than I was before. I am saying something different today than I said 10 years ago. Either call me a hypocrite, or I can say, yeah, that's because my decision, I've thought about this and my beliefs have changed. I don't see that as a big negative if you're thinking and your beliefs change. But
no, I think it's key. I think it's key to being human. But then you also have to sort of empathize with people who are going through things that you've been through before and say, okay, so you're not here yet, but I hope you get here someday, because it's like the water is really warm over here.
So that's what it should create. The same thing about parenting. Same thing as my beliefs, as my thoughts have changed over the years. It gives me pause to go, well, we're just all in different places on this journey. So I'm going to take that wherever they are, and maybe they're at a place where I'm going to be in 10 years, even though I don't agree with them right now. But John, did you have a question or comment, and then we'll wrap up?
I was just going to throw
Steve
kind of a different angle on this same type of thing. I think one of the problems we have is people are too certain about their convictions. And the world is so complicated. Issues are so complicated. It's impossible to know this is the right answer. So if everyone could just step back and take it from a point of humility and say, this is what I believe, and I'm willing to share that. I'm willing to back it up. But at the same time, I'm also willing to understand that you might believe something different. And I might even be able to learn things from you if I actually listen to you. And rather than talking past each other, we just need to talk to each other. and do it from a place of respect rather than a place of meanness. And
I shared a stage one time with a 90-year-old guy, and he sat on this stool, right? And he had his microphone, and he just spoke with conviction on what he believed. This is what I believe. This is this. And then at the end, he said, but I could be completely wrong. And I was like, oh, I love that so much, because he spoke with conviction, but had that sort of posture of, but I might be wrong. I love that. All right, Sarah, sorry we took so much of your time, but absolute delight. Thanks for not canceling, because that would have been the end of our relationship with you at all. Like, that would have just ended it. So I'm glad you didn't.
We do not want to break up now. We've got a long thing going.
And thank you again for those of you, maybe this is the first time we've chatted since the Reckies Awards show we did. You presented the award to the dynamic duo. I think it was with Ty, like Jill and Jack Burke and Mark and Jake Kiki were our dynamic duos, and you presented that award, and we had so much fun. So thanks for doing that. We're looking forward to doing that again for sure. People had a blast, but you've been such a great friend of the show. And I say this probably every time, it was kind of when we first came on your show, you're like, what are these guys doing in Minnesota? There's something kind of curious what's going on with this RecPoker thing. And we jumped on your show during the World Series a few years ago, and that really helped us get on the map and helped us get to know some more people. So we owe a lot of what you see here to you.
I will say thank you, first of all, just for having me. As always, I love chatting with you guys. And I always feel at the end of the chat like it was good. I feel heard. I feel we always end up in sort of a deeper place than I expect to get to, which I love. That's like when you're in a good conversation. But I will say one of the things you were talking about was, creating media and how to do this. And I think, working on building a community. When we first talked, I don't know, what was it, 4 years ago? However long ago it was that we very first started. I think it's also very easy for people to get stagnant, to get, especially in media or in any job or any position or anything. And RecPoker has just kept growing and trying things and doing new things. And even in the pandemic, like, okay, we're going to have this now and this. And that's actually something I really just respect, and something I'm actually not very good at. I really have a tendency to just like do what I'm good at and do what I know and keep that going. And so from someone on the outside looking at what you guys are doing, I definitely, I have just a lot of respect for what you guys are doing. And I will always want to be a part of it in whatever way I can.
Well, that's very generous. Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think the whole key to everything, like I've said in my TED Talk, like I say all the time, just surround yourself with the right peeps. Surround yourself with the right people. Like, that is it. And you're looking at a bunch of them right here. And so, I mean, I'm not saying that to be slight or whatever, but it's just so true. Find the people around you that are going to make you better, that are going to be passionate about it, that are going to come up with all these new and creative ideas, because everybody here is doing all of these amazing things. Like, I'm not doing anything other than chatting with cool people like you. So that is what makes it fun. But Sarah, we will let you go. Thanks again for your time. Best of luck. So July is coming, and then we'll see what the fall holds for you.
Yes. All right. Bye, Pet Vet too. We'll talk. You can give me all the advice when I have two coming next time. Bye, you guys.
All right. There she goes, Sarah Herring.
Thanks, Sarah.
Great friend of the show. Guys, I know we don't have a lot of time, but any quick reactions to this?
Man, I thought it was a great interview. It was a really great interview. I mean, lots of back and forth, lots of things to think about. I think some sort of controversial opinions about, some of the things. But I thought, I mean, she spoke about it well. I thought it was really, really good conversation.
I feel like that.
Well, and I like how she still voiced her opinion, even though she knew it was going to be controversial.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But she does it in a way that's not threatening. You understand where she's coming from. She's not saying, I think all of y'all are wrong. It was very well done.
Yeah, I wish I had been a little more specific in my question about the issue of misogyny specifically, and not about just comfort at the tables. But I think she did get it at the end. She got it what was most important to me, which is that it's not about cursing. It's about putting other people down and, berating other people and making other people feel bad. So it's not about vulgarity. It's just about making other people feel bad. So I think, and that's a conversation that I think we have to have, no matter who's saying it or who's being hurt by it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, good stuff. Why don't we quick hear from Jonathan Little, and then we'll come back with the community part of this podcast.
Have you ever wondered whether you should call a preflop raise or 3-bet instead? What do you do when you have a flush draw? Do you raise it or do you just call? What do you do with ace king when you miss the flop? Are you tired of guessing about what the right play is with your particular hand? Well, my name is Jonathan Little, and I am a 2-time World Poker Tour champion and creator of PokerCoaching.com, where we offer over 1,000 interactive hand quizzes where you play a hand and then get real-time feedback from our world-class pros. Don't guess and don't stress. Just register for your free account at PokerCoaching.com/RecPoker right now.
All right. Well, great stuff. Thank you, Jonathan. And just a quick shout out to the people that are in the chat too. I'm just kind of scrolling through and seeing that. It looks like you guys are kind of engaging with it as we go, but such a great member benefit too, to come on here and be able to ask questions and interact. And eventually I'll learn how to shut up so we can do more of the questions from the people, but just find it kind of seeing the back and forth there. That's really cool stuff. So thanks for you guys. I'm excited to read through all of that stuff. So I know we have limited time, so why don't we jump into our community stuff? We're not rushing you, John. I'm just rushing the transition. So take your time.
Well, on the plus side, at least I certainly won't be interrupted now that we're so far behind.
No, I should get co-hosting ability so you can mute everybody. That's what I should do.
On March 29th, Kelly S. 196220, Kelly Stork got her second daily standard victory of the year. And then none other than our fearless leader, RecPoker Steve Fredlin, got his first standard victory of the year. Stewie 13, Stuart Kendrick, fourth standard victory of the year. It looks
Canadian.
like he's trying to become the new Doug Draybeck. Then we have Night Owl. Chris Room got his second daily standard victory of the year. Bloop 7, Mark Bloomberg, his first for the year. MJB Block, Marine Blockinger, got her first victory of the year. Then we come back to RecPoker Steve, and he won a mixed event, something I thought I would never see. Excellent job.
Me neither, John.
Rigged.
Yeah, that is shocking. I'll just say it. It's shocking.
Man.
I mean, as somebody who knows nothing about mixed games either, but you've talked about how you just you barely know the rules sometimes, and now you won a mixed game. I mean, it's shocking but impressive. It's very impressive.
It's a high variance game, so it turned.
Nicely done,
okay,
buddy.
so I guess I will be interrupted. Then East Coast Bidder Ben got his third international series victory.
Nice.
And Kelly Stork got another victory in the international series. And then we have Spot Conlon, Daniel Kennedy won the LPP Daily Series tournament. So don't forget to hit up Kale Cleaton and get your free monthly membership to Learn Pro Poker.
So just real quick on that Dan Kennedy win, I almost got 3 for the week because I got to the final table and I got my 10s in against his jacks with 9 people left and his jacks held. I was down to 1/3 of a big blind. I had 178 chips with a big blind at 600, and then variance took over, and I ended up taking second place in that dumb thing. That's how bad. That's variance.
Yes,
right there.
1/3 of a chip in a chair. That's what you really need. They're gonna have to amend the statement.
It was so bad. Just how good do you run? Well, good stuff, John. Thank you so much for everything. Anything that we need to know as far as different tournaments coming up? Anything special? Anything that people are screwing up that we need to give other instruction on or anything?
No, but we likely in the next few weeks we will be announcing something new for people. But details have not been solidified, and we aren't 100% sure. But stay tuned.
And whose idea was the new thing, John?
Yeah, well, other people were spouting it, and then I might have mentioned that having another series would fit in better.
I don't want to be another Reckies Award thing where I get a gif of me, a gif of you when I'm suggesting a new tournament series. Good stuff. All right, funny stuff. Yeah, that's going to be a fun announcement for sure. How about you, Mr. Washam? Anything on the book study front we want to share?
Nothing new. I mean, we're going to be, by the time this is broadcast, we'll have already had our second one. And then, again, we're doing Modern Poker Theory by Michael Acevedo. We're inviting all of the members to join us. All the premium members can join and be part of the conversation. We had a big Zoom chat the last time, or the first session, we had like 12, 13 people in that. And it was some great conversation. Some rabbit holes were discovered and dove into, so to speak. So it's a lot of fun. It's going to be, and I think a lot of people have said this, Kim has said this, that COVID will be over by the time we get done with this book study, because it's a very intense book. There's a lot of meat in there. There's a lot to discuss. So join us and be involved in it. It's a great time.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'd say make sure you join and sign up within the next month or two if you want to be part of it before we finish the first chapter.
Yeah.
Steve, you're a genius. Mr. Content Director, what do we got coming up, or what do you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, so we're in April. We're covering turns and rivers. Our seminar for May, it will be all about sort of using data and finding leaks and doing some self-evaluation. And speaking of exciting things that I can't let you know about, I think after the May seminar, we're going to possibly be shaking things up a little in the seminar land. I think it's going to be pretty cool. So stay tuned. You may want to be a part of it.
It's incredible, I think, what's coming down the pike on both fronts. Yeah, for sure. Oh my God, Somsky. I'm just reading the comments.
People
Good
are
stuff.
excited.
Mr. Reed,
Excited.
what are we missing here? What do we need to be sharing?
There's just so much going on in RecPoker right now. I can't cover all of it. So all I'm going to say is thank you to my wife for spending 10 wonderful years. We're celebrating our anniversary this week. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, Steve.
Wow, look at that guy taking the platform to give a shout out. I won't say her name, but man, and just the fact that she's with you. I mean,
oh God, that feels like 20 years. She's told me that once already.
She's a saint.
Right? A Steelers fan living in Canada, dealing with Minnesotans on an international.
Can't be easy.
I don't know what this guy is doing, but Jim, man, enjoy. Hopefully you can live it up a little bit this week and kind of enjoy that piece. All right, so a lot of great stuff going on. Go to rec.poker, check it out. Feel free to email us if there's any questions at all, whether you're a community member, a premium member, wrecking crew member, whatever it is, just reach out and let us know. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Thanks to Sarah Herring for sure. Thank you to our panel, Chris and Rob and John and everybody in the chat. Gibber, Pat, Marcus, great. Thanks for joining us.